Welcome to Landmine Live. This is the first of many more live streams we're going to be doing this summer and then throughout the fall at our new studio here in Anchorage. Today we're going to be talking about the really hot housing market in Anchorage and Alaska, the price of commodities, lumber, low interest rates, and the combination of all these things that are making the price of houses high and the demand being very high as well. So we're joined by three great folks I'm going to introduce in 1 second. But first I want to thank GCI for being our sponsor. If you need internet, let me tell you, GCI, we have gigabit internet here. It's so fast. I'm actually kind of scared to get on my computer. It's so fast. It's a gigabit. It just peaks right over when you do the speed test. It's really good. So GCI, cell phones, internet, TV, all the things. We want to thank GCI for being our sponsor. Today we're joined by Eric Visser from Visser Construction. He's an Anchorage builder and also the president of the Anchorage Home Builders Association, right?
Correct. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad you're here. We have July Leslie with Elite Real Estate Group. You've been a real estate agent for 17 years, right? Here in Anchorage?
Yep.
Happy to have you here. And we have Brett Watson from University of Alaska, the Institute of Social and Economic Research, an economist.
That's right. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
PhD, right?
Yeah. Colorado School of Mines.
Pretty good. So I want to start with you, Brett. You know, there's like low interest rates. The COVID happened. We're seeing these huge prices and really high demand. What's going on? What's happening?
Yeah. So James Carville used to have this saying back in the 90s that it's the economy stupid. Well, I think that it's pretty safe to say that it's COVID stupid, right? So there were just a bunch of factors that kind of combined. I mean, COVID has affected everything, right? You go back to March and the world's kind of shutting down. I think that what happened to a lot of people is that they just got juked. The economy kind of juked people. Right, so a lot of producers, factories, manufacturers, home builders, they probably thought things were going to be a lot worse than they ended up being, and so they kind of planned for one outcome, and the economy ended up actually going the other direction thanks to a lot of federal support, things that the state, local, and federal governments were doing. The pandemic, I think, ended up not being quite as bad as people thought it was going to be, just because of some of the actions that people took and some of the characteristics of the virus itself. But anyway, yeah, all these forces kind of combined. Demand went through the roof, and supply had kind of cut itself off, and now it's kind of struggling to catch back up. So I don't know. That kind of, I think it takes us to where we are today, is supply trying to catch up to where demand has been.
So Eric, I want to ask you. You're a builder. Yep. During the COVID, did you not do as much building as you had planned, or?
Yeah, most definitely. I think I was in the environment that I thought things were going to slow down pretty dramatically. So, when COVID started in February, March, you start planning for, what you're going to build that summer, signing contracts for that summer work. I was fortunate enough to have some really good contracts with clients that were out of the state, bigger remodel projects. So I had the ability to keep my crew busy. They could go to a home where there wasn't somebody staying there and living there. We didn't have to worry about so many COVID precautions. So they were able to, maintain full employment. But that point in time where I said, okay, we're not going to do any specs. We're going to kind of scale back on what we're doing from a home building perspective. That definitely hurt us come May, June, when housing prices just went crazy. People wanted to start buying everything that was available. So it really only took a couple of months for things to change pretty dramatically.
One of the big factors nationwide here in Alaska as well is the price of lumber. We keep hearing a lot about it. It's up 300% or 400%. How's that affecting you right now in your building?
Yeah, so lumber prices have definitely driven up the cost of homes quite substantially. I think there's a few different prongs that played into that issue. One was all the mills shutting down when COVID happened. People just weren't able to go and actually produce the lumber and the OSB that was required. The other thing that happened was later on in 2020, we had that big winter storm that went through Texas, shut a bunch of the refineries down. That had a big impact on resins and glues, which kind of, is a big portion of the OSB production and doors and that sort of thing. So all those factors compounding on themselves has really driven up costs just, in the beginning part of 21 pretty dramatically.
So July, you were showing me on that graph there that there was a huge amount of houses sold in the end of 2020 in Anchorage.
The second half. Yeah, March, April into May, literally like 90% of my clients called me and said, no, we're not going to list our house or take it off the market, or no, we don't want to go look. And I thought it was going to be much worse than it ended up being too. I thought, okay, I'm not really going to work much this year. Oh well, make some other plans. I flew my niece up and we did all kinds of fun stuff. And then all of a sudden, like around June, July, my phone was ringing off the hook, which was just so odd.
So the combination of the low supply, I guess, also these really low interest rates. I mean, I'm looking at, I have a 3.25 on a 30-year loan for my condo, and I was just looking, I could go to 2.25 at 15 years.
Yeah.
So the rates are lower than they've been. The last time they were this low, I think, was probably around after the economic crash in 2009. Rates went way down.
Yeah, I think they're actually lower now, but yeah.
Right, they're even lower.
Yeah.
So you were saying earlier that you're having a problem with, there's so many people that make an offer on a place.
Yeah, so
right
I've
now.
got about a half dozen really active buyers right now, maybe a little bit more than that. And a home comes on the market, and you look at like the app where you schedule showings, and within hours it's completely booked. You can't even get to look at the house. In fact, some agents now are doing where you'll pull up the showings and it'll say on there multiple showings allowed, like just a free for all. Go for it. And there could be dozens of offers. There could be 10, 15, 20 offers.
I've known several people that have put houses for sale and they sold not within days, within hours.
Hours.
Have you seen this kind of thing before?
Never. Nope. I've been an
Never.
agent for 17, going on 18 years. Never seen anything like it. Not even close.
So Brett, I mean, you're an economist. Low interest rates, high prices, high demand. Could this be a bubble or temporary? Because it's not just, housing prices are up in Seattle, Arizona, California. It's not just an Anchorage thing. It's a nationwide phenomenon right now.
Yeah, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in the Bahamas, and
You could be like Michael Burry with
exactly.
The Big Short.
Done a Big Short and gotten myself out of here. It's always hard to say, and you always look at, you could basically say at any point in the curve, like as things are riding up, well, has to be the peak. Oh, this has to be the peak, and keep riding for a long time, and maybe never come back down, or we could be right at the peak of it, or on the downside. So it's always hard to say. But you look at kind of the fundamentals over the next year or so. People still have quite a bit of money in their savings accounts. There's been all this federal support that's come out, for both the unemployed people, and if you'd stayed employed, you probably didn't spend a lot over the course of the last year. A lot of people had their student loan payments frozen, so that was kind of the boat that I was in. So we had a bunch of extra income saved over the last year from not having spent it. So you invested in your home or other kind of durable goods, things that you kind of have around the house. And so, looking out over the course of the next couple of years, the federal government's talking about a big infrastructure proposal that might put further pressure on these commodity prices and kind of further spur demand for some of the stuff.
And labor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the labor as well, but from like a macro level, like more savings, still low housing interest rates, more money being spent. The budget's we're at World War II spending levels.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about inflation, even if not realized in the what the government admits? What could happen to inflation when the government says there's not inflation, but we see it in the form of prices and say people buying cars in Venezuela, for example, it's low inflation, but
yeah, I was looking at the inflation report out from last month, and what was really surprising about it was that most inflation from March to April was driven by the used car market. So I don't know if you dug into the April inflation report, but that was super interesting to me. And you kind of dig into what was driving the used car sales to really drive the overall inflation rate. And apparently it's some combination of all the rental car agencies kind of dumped their inventories at the end of last year. They got juked by demand again because they thought that the pandemic was going to last a lot longer. So they don't have any inventory to sell into the used market now. And new cars apparently are having trouble getting manufactured because of semiconductor chip shortages, because everybody's trying to mine Bitcoin.
I know we're talking about housing, but I have a lot of friends who work in the car business, and I knew there was a shortage, and I knew the rental car. I was curious. I went to Toyota, Kendall, a couple days ago. I just didn't realize this. I live by there. I drove by. You go on the lot. There's no cars.
Yeah.
They have right now one. As of a couple days ago, they had one new Forerunner, one new Tacoma. Nothing else. The ones they did have are going for $2,000 to $5,000 over MSRP, and the used cars are going for more than the new cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two
This is
friends
all over the
that
country.
Yeah.
rather than trade their car in, they're renting them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like daily rentals.
Turo's crazy right now.
Right.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, rather than turn their
Yeah.
car in, they're doing that. Yeah.
So Eric, how, we talked about this earlier, but how much land is there available in Anchorage that's not the boggy, marshy land that we could build on? And what could the city be doing to help? You were talking about permitting and
Yeah, definitely. So I think something that plays well into this entire conversation is, the whole supply and demand. Like, we need more housing in Anchorage. If you look at the housing needs analysis that the Muni put out, it was the same before COVID as it is now. Like, we need, thousands of new housing units in Anchorage just to kind of satisfy this demand that's going crazy right now.
thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think the 2040 plan has all the information in it, and I can't recall right off the top of my head, but we need a bunch of housing units. Yeah.
So I look pretty much every day at not the whole municipality. I work the whole municipality, but I focus in Anchorage. So I pull up pretty much every morning, I do a circle and see how many homes are for sale in Anchorage. And it's 217 today. We've only broken that 200 mark like 4 or 5 times year to date. That's crazy.
So
there should be normally hundreds, 450, 500 homes.
You were saying earlier that between like 200 and 500, who was saying that?
Oh, the price
range.
Yeah,
Over a certain amount, it's a little easier? Or?
Yeah, between about 200 and say 200,000 and about 550,000. It's crazy. You list your house and it's going to sell. A little bit less so on the east side, a little bit, and maybe the most in South Anchorage and downtown. But yeah, you list your house for sale and you're in that price range. And there's so many buyers that have been looking and missing out, because if you think about a house goes up for sale and there's 20 offers, well, there's 19 people that are still looking for a house. And that's what we're seeing every day.
Are these buyers? So during the COVID, a lot of people got laid off and stopped working, but a lot of people, they went work from home. Professional people, engineers, lawyers, maybe government workers. So they weren't really, their income wasn't affected as much as somebody who was maybe working in a restaurant or.
And like Brett said, they're making more in a way because they're not going out to eat. They're not getting their nails done. They're not getting their hair done. They're not, all that stuff, not going to concerts, not traveling.
So when somebody comes to you they come into you to say, I want to get the money out of the place, but I'm worried about buying a place. Is that because it's a catch-22? You sell your house, but then you have all this money, but then you want to buy a house and it's really high.
Right, and that's what Brett and I were talking about. This market's kind of creating itself because I've got all these people that want to list, but they're afraid to list because what are they going to buy? There's nothing out there for them to buy, and that just kind of.
The other thing I recently heard from an appraiser was they'll appraise a house, let's say for example at $300,000, and this is for the banks for the loan, but it'll sell for $330,000 because there's so much interest. Mm-hmm. But then if they don't have an extra $30,000 cash or $40,000 to put down, then they can't get the loan.
Yeah. So there are between, I'd say, $250,000, $300,000 and maybe up to $600,000. If you're buying a house in that price range, you can't unless you have cash, period. You can't buy a house unless you have cash. Although I will say, not to do any plugs or anything, but Alaska USA just came back with the first zero down home loans in a long time.
Wow.
That sounds like the housing market.
Should
no
I
income,
not have said
no
that?
problem.
You said it wasn't a bubble?
You do have to have a 720 credit score. So you have to
But I think
responsible.
talking about the previous housing bubble is an important component of the reason that we're in the situation that we are now. Talking about how suppliers kind of got juked here, right? They have been very conservative since the previous housing crash. I don't know if this is your experience
100%.
there. Yeah.
And I mean, even from a municipal perspective, like the amount of homes that we built during the previous administration, guarantee the lowest amount of homes that we built during any previous administration. So it's all of that stuff leading up to it. We haven't been increasing supply like we should have been from a home building perspective. And now all of a sudden, the people that have kind of been holding off, and interest rates dropped and they're like, oh my goodness, this is a really great time to buy. The supply's not there. Stuff that we should have built, 5-10 years ago isn't available.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the situation that we're in now is that, the firms that survived the previous housing bust were the ones that were playing it pretty conservative. And so they'll just continue to play that conservative strategy and keep kind of low supply out. And so it's maybe not surprising that, kind of across industries, the ones that had survived the last bust were playing it a little bit safe back in March and April, and then realized that we were actually going to ride out a pretty big high.
So Eric, besides permitting's a big thing, I imagine, but is there anything else the city could be doing, or maybe it's a market, right? So you want to be careful
most
with the government
definitely.
intervening in the market
I
too
think
much.
the municipality has been kind of putting the onus on developers for a long time on improving public infrastructure. Things like roads, stormwater, pipes in the ground, that sort of thing has always been on the developer. There's other cities that have much more broad-based approach where they do public-private partnerships, where they use tax credits and that sort of thing that kind of spur more investment dollars getting brought into their city. We haven't had those, kind of programs in the city right now. They have been doing some things with the downtown tax abatement. I think expanding that to the broader city, but then also, coming to the table with a little more investment, putting in a road that's needed to increase access to, areas up on the hillside, not putting requirements on a developer to replace a street and install a sidewalk when the municipality is planning on replacing it in 5 to 7 years anyways. There's just always been a black and white line in the sand that says, okay, if you guys want to do this development right now, you need to repave the street, and you need to put in curb and gutter, and you need to put in a sidewalk, and you need to put it in a stormwater system. All that sort of stuff drives up housing costs and makes it less beneficial for a developer to actually put those units, on the market.
I mean, where I live in a condo. I've been there for 8 years. I'm on the condo board for a long time. I'm the president.
Mr. Prez.
No big deal. But anyways, we have the main road that goes through our association, which is a city road. But we have Fairweather Park Loop that's a private road. And being on the condo board, years ago, I realized that sewage part of the road, that's on us. So we're always kind of worried if something goes down. And I always wondered why, I guess you don't want the city to take over for everything, but that's a road that's essentially a public road, and there's houses there, and we have to maintain the road, maintain the sewer. Is that pretty common? Something you said it's pretty common?
Yeah, a lot of developments are, condo or housing associations where we'll put in a private street and maintain the, water and sewer or the street maintenance itself from that little development.
And to go back a little bit on what you said, with the burden being on the developers, I mainly do residential almost exclusively, but I have worked with commercial investors and developers that do a project here and say, no thanks, I'm going back to Utah, I'm going back to Indiana, I'm going back to,
I know people right now, they said they have money, they want to be able to invest in the city, but they're not because it's such a pain. And because the process is so long in the city. It's so dramatic. When I was talking to some builders and developers out in the valley, somebody came up, has 20 some acres of property in the valley. It was February of this year, March. They're like, hey, let's put a plan together to subdivide this, put in a road, get some lots out there and have people start building. A project like that in Anchorage would probably take a year to a year and a half to just get through the permitting phase. They went from February making the decision to subdivide it. They're moving dirt already, putting in the road. That's months. And we don't have that ability in Anchorage right now.
The Matsu Borough Assembly, for a long time since the COVID, they've been joking when they start their meeting. They say, we want to thank Anchorage for sending all these folks to our restaurants and our businesses.
Yeah.
It's so switching hats for a second, you're the Anchorage Home Builders president.
Correct.
And you guys have been involved in hosting debates and talking about these issues. Do you have any hope or with the new administration, the new Anchorage mayor, changing things?
Yep, definitely. I think there's been a lot of issues that we've been working over the last 5 years that we hope to get some resolution on. Working with staff on changing some R2 height requirements. There's some just really I would say kind of stupid requirements in there that we're trying to get changed. The other thing we're looking at doing is kind of increasing the ADU adoption. The municipality passed an ADU ordinance to kind of incentivize, or not incentivize.
Extra dwelling units?
Extra dwelling units, just to get more housing units in Anchorage, whether somebody rents it out or it's more of like a multi-generational living type situation, but kind of expanding those in a greater way that more people take advantage of them, because I don't think that initial ADU ordinance took root like the city thought it was going to.
Yes, speaking of the permitting, I don't want to say the names, but I have a friend who bought a property a couple years ago on the hillside, and there's a road and there's like a side road or a driveway. They started building it, and the city came in and they said, you have to pave this. whole strip of, it was several hundred feet, at the cost of, it was like crazy. It was like $500,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they probably
something.
wanted to do it to municipal requirements.
And further up the road, there was somebody else living there in a house that had been built a few years back, much more expensive. I'm just going to say they knew some people, and they didn't have the road requirement. So this person starts going to the permitting office, talking to the assembly. At some point, we inquired about doing an article, and all of a sudden, the requirement went away. So it seems very arbitrary that several houses don't have paved roads. This new house gets built. It's like, oh, you have to put in a paved road.
Yeah, it's kind of on a per unit basis, and interestingly enough, there's actually a policy that just came out probably 2.5, 3 weeks ago for access to somebody's property through the municipal right-of-way. There's tons of lots up on the hillside where you actually have to drive down a municipal right-of-way to get to the house, right? The municipality hasn't put in a street or a road or any sort of ditching or anything like that. With the previous administration, if you got over, I think it was like 5 lots, then you had to build the road to like municipal standards, which is crazy expensive compared to just putting in a 16-foot wide driveway that's like wrapped or gravel with ditching on the side. So there's a policy out right now that allows you to build a 16-foot wide driveway in the municipal right-of-way to actually access this lot, which should be pretty beneficial. Open up definitely a few lots up in the hillside type area that won't be as crazy as expensive as the municipal requirement.
July, I'm curious, how much do you think the proliferation of like short-term rentals like Airbnb have had an impact? I mean, do you work with buyers that are like, oh, this is great, I can rent out this basement on Airbnb and I'm willing to pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 more for this house because I know that I can rent this place out on Airbnb for...
So I'm just kind of just experiencing this for the first time this year, really. I've sold this one lady, a couple ladies that I've sold places to that they're Airbnb or Furnished Finder, I think it's called. And when I inquired about doing it for one of my rentals, that's always been a long-term rental, I'm just inundated. I'm just like flooded with people saying, my past clients that I sold to saying, hey, I've got 10 people I turned down this week for mine. Do you want them? Like, yeah. So I'm just kind of learning about that this year. But it's huge.
Don't I know Hawaii is big on this. Don't they? They're starting to charge or tax Airbnb and VRBO. Do we do that? The bed tax thing? Are we doing that?
I don't know.
I don't think we're doing that yet.
Hawaii's not
messing.
Bed tax.
Hawaii's not messing around with this.
They actually put a cap on it. They put a cap on the number of Airbnb units per, and I think they went off of residential housing units. There needs to be so much percentage of residential housing units in the district. And then they would allow, X number of percentage of Airbnb permits. Like you actually have to have a permit number in Hawaii for your Airbnb.
I think they also have to pay the hotel bed
100%.
tax.
Yep.
Which, I got mixed feelings on it's a market, but at the same time, you're basically screwing up people's ability. I mean, you've seen other parts of the country where it's really hard to, because there's all these rentals happening. It's really hard to buy a place for anything. California, for example, teachers they're government subsidized because the housing market's so high. So I don't think we're there yet, but the prices are going up, and I guess you wonder like what the average income is and what's going to happen in Anchorage in 10 years if we don't start building a lot more places. What's going to happen with the market?
And I think one of the reasons too that we didn't talk about with why there's more buyers right now is so many people can work from wherever. I've got a couple moving up from Chicago that have wanted to live here for a long time but never could, and they're both work remote. So that shift in our country of people leaving California because it's so expensive, moving to Boise, which is now actually getting to be crazy expensive. But anyway, that shift is interesting.
We've talked a lot about that in some podcasts I've done about this idea. We've always wanted to live, work, play, and we have people in California, Seattle that are tech workers and they want to be outdoors, and now they can work remote. So attracting people, that's where kind of downtown comes up. That's the thing everybody talks about. I moved here in 2004, and they're always talking about
revitalizing downtown.
And it doesn't seem to change much since I've been here, 16 years. Is that something you're working on? Do you do anything downtown, or are you other parts of Anchorage?
I have not done anything downtown, no. I haven't been really focused on that.
It seems like if we had like a bunch of high-rise condos down there, we could fill them up quick.
I think so.
kind of a chicken and egg problem, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and I know that, they face this issue downtown, is that there's not really services for residents downtown, grocery stores and that sort of thing. So do you build the grocery stores first and then that attracts the residential units, or do you build the residential units first, which creates the demand for the
What's that, the build it and they will come?
Yeah, I mean,
it's an economics no-no, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is kind of the branding of Alaska. I think that Alaska still projects the last frontier wilderness lifestyle in kind of the branding to the lower 48. But that's maybe not the most attractive proposition for the Silicon Valley folks that are like, well, do I want to live in Aspen or Jackson Hole or Boise? I mean, you probably get a pretty similar lifestyle, maybe even slightly more urban in Anchorage than those places, but that's probably not the perception.
I think the attraction of Anchorage, you can live here and in 30 minutes you can be on one of the trails, and an hour later you can be in a place that people their whole life dreamed to see.
Yeah.
And but that goes back to the housing, is how much are people going to be willing to pay?
Yep.
So, July, what are you telling your clients or people that are interested in selling, and then also what are you telling buyers right now where the market's pretty?
Yeah, so my biggest tip for buyers right now is if you're pre-qualified, say 450,000, maybe don't be looking that high. Go down a little bit, because pretty much everything's getting bid up. So that's a good tip, is if you want to buy a house.
What about like me? So I had, I put my condo for sale in 2016 and just to see if I could sell it. I ended up not selling it, but what I learned was if you ever put your house for sale, these fucking realtors will call you all the time and they'll say, hey, I saw your house was for sale 5 years ago. Do you want to? And I joke with one of my legislator friends, make a bill to make them not call me. And it's always like, hey, just wanted to see if you wanted to put it back for sale. But this last time somebody called me 3 weeks ago and they said, I saw your house the condo was on the market in 2016. I go, I'm not interested, don't want to sell it. He goes, what if I have a buyer right now?
Yeah.
Because he probably did.
And I was like, so I was thinking maybe one just went for sale, my similar unit, for much higher than they've ever asked. And I was thinking maybe I sell it and take the equity out, but then I got to go live somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's the catch-22 of where do you sell and then wait, or do you wait for the market to go down? And like you said, prediction, no one knows.
No one knows. Yeah, there's no way to know. Yeah, it's crazy times. So I won't name names, but there is an agent.
You can name names, sir.
I'm not going to. I really like him. I really like him. Wasn't happy to hear about this practice, but this is what I heard he's doing. He is calling on behalf of his buyers. He's calling sellers and saying, I see you just listed your house. My buyer wants it. I'll make you this offer. In this case, it was like 40 some grand over list price. Verbally, if you verbally agree to not deal with anyone else, I'll submit it in writing. So
ooh, that's a little shady.
It's not the most ethical, I don't think, but again, I like the guy, so I'm not naming names. But yeah,
and any advantage you can get in this market, right? You gotta,
right. But so the other buyers that wanted to make offers on the house, were told no. In this case, there was some chatter behind the scenes. Anyway, I won't get too much detail.
I think the other thing is if you know somebody who's going to sell.
But that's what's happening.
If you know somebody who's going to sell, and I've had a few friends do this, they didn't even list it.
Right.
They just
Just
bought
start
it
talking.
private, and they didn't list it, so there was.
Yeah, that's how we bought our place 2 months ago.
So you just bought in this kind of market.
Yeah.
But it was an off the market.
So they were getting ready to list, and our agent was going to be their listing agent, and so she brokered both sides of the deal. And but yeah, it was a property that was going to get listed in the next couple of weeks, and it was a hard decision, because I've been watching these prices tick up and up and up, and we got the same information everybody else does. It's low interest rates. We've got quite a bit of savings. It was kind of ready to buy our first place, and so we're like, well, we'll just bite the bullet. And I figured there's if we're in a bubble, I was ready to eat some of it, and but we'll see. I think prices are still going up, and what was really surprising was the inventory. So we started looking seriously in February, and what our agent told us was, look, stuff will come up right before school, and everybody will sell in the summer.
Yep.
But I guess that just hasn't happened. That inventory just didn't open this year.
It's so bizarre. Like I said, in 17 years of doing this, I've never seen such low inventory.
Well,
and if you don't have cash, you can't buy a house really right now. That's just bizarre.
I think it's something that affects pretty much everybody, either renting or buying. And I guess we'll end here, but kind of closing thoughts, Eric. What are do you have an optimistic or pessimistic view in the next 5 or 10 years of of Anchorage's housing market?
Yeah, no, hopefully we can work with this next administration and get a few more homes built that we previously were. I think the outlook is definitely positive. Going back to the lumber perspective, this conversation that we're having, everyone's having it around the entire United States.
Yeah.
We just don't have the suppliers that have the ability to increase the production that we need. OSB is one of the big, components that go into a house. It's your roof sheeting.
OSB?
It's OSB, yeah. It's your wall sheeting, it's your floor sheeting, all that sort of stuff. We have enough OSB production in the United States to satisfy about in North America, to satisfy about 1.3 to 1.35 million homes. We're doing housing starts at 1.7 to 1.8 million houses per year. So it takes years to stand up a new OSB press. That if the demand keeps going, the prices are going to keep increasing. I don't see prices going down anywhere near pandemic levels. I don't know. I would almost dare to say ever again. We're talking about $350 per 1,000 board feet. We're at $1,750 per 1,000 board feet right now.
Jeez.
It's 5 times increase.
They're having the most long duration future contracts trading regarding lumber ever in the history.
I should have bought wood stocks.
Should have bought wood. Yeah.
I bought Boeing and Alaska Airlines, which was at the bottom. I should have bought a lot more. A little bit.
So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Demand has to subside in order for prices to reduce. So I don't see that happening anytime soon with interest rates continuing to be so low.
Yeah.
So July, to wrap up, you mentioned you sold a house with no appliances recently. That's another issue. Is I went to Home Depot last year to do a water heater thing, and the little float deal, whatever, we couldn't find any.
Yeah.
And then I realized I was talking to the Home Depot guy. All this stuff is not available for building.
Yeah. So I've got a little tip on that I learned from some recent clients of mine, Ariel and James, clever guy. He used to work at Lowe's, and so he knew that there's return items and maybe gently dented or something like that items in the back. So
Best Buy has TV was returned. It's
open box
30%
items.
off.
Yeah, open box items. Yeah. So for people that are in that situation, go check out the Home Depot, the Lowe's, and see if they have some open box stuff. But my overall that I tell people is this maybe isn't the time to buy a house and flip it, but if you're buying your family home, you're going to be there 8-10 years. Does it really matter if you're buying at the high of the market? Not really. Not when you're looking at long term.
I was going to ask Brett. I joke I love is you never meet a one-handed economist. Because there's always on the other hand. But what are you study this stuff pretty close? What are your kind of thoughts about the next 5 or 10 years?
Oh, 5 to 10 years. In Anchorage, I have been just surprised at the resilience of the housing market here. I thought that the BP exit was going to cause a housing price correction.
A lot of people left, yeah.
And I mean, we really didn't see it. Housing prices continue to stay pretty steady. And so, I had kind of been incorrectly predicting the Anchorage housing market downturn for the last couple of years, and so I'm cautious to make sort of down market predictions. I think I'll adopt Eric's optimism and look to a bright future.
I'll adopt it too.
Yeah, same here.
Direction.
Yeah, that's right. So Bronson just had a press conference earlier, and he announced some new people for his administration. So July 1st, and I guess it'll probably take a few months, but maybe we'll do an update here next fall, and we can kind of see where things are.
Maybe we'll get him on too.
Sure, yeah.
Sounds great.
We got the cutouts still from the debate. Well, I want to thank you guys all for coming. So July Leslie, Elite Real Estate Group, Eric Visser, Visser Construction, and the president of the Anchorage Home Builders.
Yep, thank you.
And Brett
Thank
Watson from University of Alaska and the Institute of Social and Economic Research. I didn't realize, I knew ISER had a lot of people, but I went to there's a lot of people there, isn't there?
Yeah.
I thought there was 5 or 10. There's a lot more than that.
Well, let's see.
seemed
I am just one of a couple of economists now, but
You have a PhD, right?
yeah.
Pretty young. How old are you?
30.
I feel I'm 36 and I don't have that.
You got to go get a
Keep
PhD,
working.
Jeff.
Keep
It's fine.
That's another bubble is the college
Yeah,
loans.
people
and-
call you doctor. It's fun.
Right, that's great. Well, I really want to thank you guys for coming in. I want to thank Scott and
you.
Carolyn for doing the live stream. Jensen Hall, they're here in our new studio partners. And we're going to be doing a lot more live streams. The plan is to Probably fall, make this a more regular thing, but in the meantime, we're going to be doing kind of infrequent live streams. Politics, business, have different folks on the panel. So I want to thank our panel, Scott and Carolyn, for being here. And again, GCI, love that GCI, for sponsoring the live stream. So stay tuned for the next live stream, and stay tuned, or check out our Facebook and our Twitter and website for more updates and more information about future live stream events. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Pretty good, huh?
That was
Yeah,
great.
it will be. It would be fun with this.